Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. My son spat in my face and said, "Pay the rent or get out." And then My name is Helen Williams. I'm 68 years old, and I've always believed that family is a refuge, a sacred place where you can find unconditional support, a love that never fails. Ever since I was young, this idea has guided me. All my life, I've worked tirelessly to raise my two children, Michael and Sarah. I've worked a series of odd jobs, sometimes several at the same time, so that my children would have everything they needed, so that they could go to school, eat properly, and have decent clothes. I've put their needs before my own, I've sacrificed my dreams and desires, all without ever complaining. Their future has always been my priority. I wanted them to have a better life than mine, to lack nothing, not even what I could never have. I never counted my hours, nor the price I paid physically and morally, as long as my children were safe, happy. I believed, with all my heart, that this love, this self-denial, would always be recognized, respected. That my children would know, one day, everything I had done for them. But one autumn evening, everything I thought I knew about my son Michael came crashing down in an instant. Michael is 42 years old now. He was a sweet, sensitive boy, a caring son. A good man, or so I believed. Ever since he was little, he had that tender gaze and attentive listening that reassured me. He loved his sister, he loved his family. We had weathered life's storms together. I thought that as the years went by, our bond would only strengthen. That evening, he came home late. The sky was already dark, the pale light from the street lamp casting strange shadows across the living room. Michael's face was closed, his eyes avoiding mine. His shoulders were tense, as if he were carrying an immense weight. His wife, Emily, wasn't with him. Her absence further heightened the tension in the air. I approached, with the gentleness I had always used to soothe the pain and fatigue of my children. "Michael, how was your day?" I asked, trying to smile. He looked up at me, but instead of his usual gaze, I saw only coldness, hardness, a new and frightening distance. It was as if I didn't know him anymore. "You know very well why I'm angry, Mom." I stood there frozen, my heart aching. I didn't understand. This anger burning in his eyes, this bitterness, what had I done to deserve this? "The rent, it's been overdue for 2 months. You have to pay it or leave." I felt my throat tighten, my voice crack. "Michael, I have no more resources. Your sister helps me a little, but it's not easy." I tried to reason, to explain my situation, to appeal to his compassion, to his son's heart. But what happened next, I will never forget. He walked toward me, his face hard, his features tense with anger and perhaps frustration. Without a word of apology, without a look of tenderness, he spat in his own mother's face. The cold liquid slid down my cheek, and in that moment, I felt the ground give way beneath my feet. My whole life, all my sacrifices, all the tenderness I had given him seemed to have evaporated at once. My own son, the one I had raised with so much love, had just treated me like a stranger, like a burden, like a burden. He continued, his voice hard and sharp. "Pay the rent or get out." I had no more words. No more strength. I remained motionless, my heart broken into 1,000 pieces. That evening, I took refuge in my room, behind the closed door, as if silence could protect me from the world. The tears flowed for a long time, tears of incomprehension, pain, and humiliation. These tears reflected all the invisible wounds I had accumulated over the years, but which I had never wanted to show. I felt alone, abandoned, betrayed by the one I had loved more than anything. The days that followed were crushingly lonely. Michael and Emily had cut off all communication. My calls went unanswered, my messages unreturned. I was alone, left to my own devices in this house I had built with so much love and sacrifice. Every room seemed to whisper memories, the children's laughter, the dinners we shared, the nights of worry and hope, but now, these walls echoed only with emptiness and silence. I wandered aimlessly through the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom where I had watched my children grow up, as if searching for an invisible presence, an outstretched hand that never came. The house was no longer a refuge, but a prison. Abandonment weighed heavily on my heart, a weight I had never imagined I would one day carry. Faced with this situation, I knew I couldn't stay there indefinitely. But at 68, with a modest pension that barely covered my needs, finding affordable housing was a real struggle. Rents in the neighborhood had climbed in recent years, and my savings were melting away like snow in the sun. I had to sell some personal belongings, mementos accumulated over the decades, my old piano, a collection of books I loved so much, jewelry I inherited from my mother. Each sale was a wrench, a small symbolic death. Yet, even though anguish and humiliation threatened to suffocate me, something inside me refused to give in. A force, tenuous but determined, was emerging from that dark night. I was not ready to disappear, nor to be crushed by pain and rejection. This was not just a matter of material survival, but of dignity, pride, and the will to regain my place in this world. One morning, after a nearly sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling, I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart heavy but my mind suddenly clear. I had reached an inner boundary. Something inside me had broken, but something else, deeper, had just awakened. I couldn't stay there, wasting away in silence in an environment that had become hostile. I could no longer wait for my dignity to be restored, I had to take it back myself. So I dialed the number of a woman I hadn't seen in a while, but whose voice had always reassured me. Linda Morgan. A longtime friend, almost a sister in spirit. We had met over 30 years ago, when our children were still in elementary school. She had always been this lively, direct, yet incredibly generous person. I worried she had forgotten about me, or worse, heard the gossip. But after 2 rings, her familiar voice rang in my ear. Helen? My God, Helen, is that you? I couldn't speak right away. My lips were trembling, my throat was tight. But she understood without me saying a word. Come. Come right away. My house is open, as always. When I arrived at her house, suitcase in hand and heart aching, she welcomed me as if nothing had changed between us. She hugged me tightly, for a long time, and simply whispered. You are not alone. You have never been alone. At Linda's, I found a little human warmth. It wasn't much, a slightly messy guest room, simple but lovingly prepared meals, but it was a shelter. Better still, it was a place where I could breathe without fear of a contemptuous look. She listened to me without judging, she let me cry without trying to run away. But very quickly, I knew I couldn't settle into the comfort of dependency, however sweet it might be. I needed more. More than a roof over my head, more than tenderness. I needed to stand on my own 2 feet again. I had to regain my autonomy. Rebuild my dignity. At almost 70, this might seem insane. Many would have said, just rest. Enjoy the little time you have left. But that's not in my nature. I'd seen too much, experienced too much, to resign myself to becoming invisible. So I started looking for work. Every day after breakfast, I sat down at Linda's computer and sent out applications. I called. I interviewed. Often, I was told. You have great experience, but we are looking for someone younger. Or again. You understand, the position is very physical. Every rejection was a slap in the face, but I refused to let it get me down. With each rejection, I got back up with a little more determination. I reminded myself that I'd managed far more demanding jobs. I'd raised 2 children on a caregiver's salary, I'd juggled night shifts with PDAs. If I'd survived that, I could surely survive a series of no's. Then one day, the phone rang. It was the director of a small municipal library located in a quiet neighborhood, away from the city center. Ms. Williams? I've seen your file. I think your profile would be a perfect fit for us. I couldn't believe my ears. I took a bus the next morning and met the director, a kind woman named Grace Holloway, with graying hair and gold-rimmed glasses. She showed me the library, modest but full of charm, wooden shelves, a quiet reading room, a little corner for children, and above all, that soothing smell of old books. "It doesn't pay very well," she told me. "But it's peaceful here. We need someone reliable, someone warm. Someone like you." I accepted without hesitation. This work, though modest, gave me back a rhythm. A sense of purpose. I got up every morning with a purpose. I got to know regular readers, listened to children talk about their favorite books. I was useful again. I felt alive. I was no longer just a rejected mother or an aging woman. I was Helen Williams, library assistant, citizen, woman standing up. And even though my heart still bore the scars of what Michael had done to me, I felt something blossom within me again, the pride of existing, despite everything. A few weeks later, as I was walking home from the library, tired but strangely at peace, my phone rang. It was a number I knew by heart, even though I hadn't seen it in a long time. Sarah. My youngest daughter. My sweetness. The one who, from childhood, felt the emotions of others as if they were her own. As soon as I picked up the phone, I heard tension in her voice, a sadness mixed with restrained affection. "Mom." Just this word, but charged with infinite tenderness. I sat on the edge of the bed in the room Linda had lent me, my heart pounding. "Mom, I'm sorry about what's happening with Michael. I should have called you sooner, but I didn't know what to say." She paused, as if hesitating to open a painful door. "Michael, he's going through a very difficult time. He lost his job months ago. He hasn't told anyone. Not even Emily. He pretends to go to work every morning, to avoid facing the truth. He's trapped himself in a spiral of shame, of anger. He can't sleep anymore. He's unrecognizable. He's lost himself." And then his voice broke. "But he loves you, Mom. He loves you deeply, even if he doesn't know how to show it anymore." I was silent for a few seconds. A shiver ran through me, a mixture of hope and pain. Part of me wanted to scream, "How can love spit in your face?" But another, wiser part knew, sometimes, suffering distorts the most sincere feelings. Sometimes, those we love drown, and in their panic, they even strike the hand that tries to save them. I hung up, staring into the soft evening light. And that evening, Linda looked at me for a long time, then simply said, "You've never been one to give up. Not on your children." And she was right. So, with Linda and Sarah's support, I decided to reconnect with my son. It was one of the most difficult moments of my life. We met in a small, discreet cafe outside the city center. It was a cold day. Michael arrived a few minutes late. His face was drawn, his features marked by anxiety. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes tired. He had aged 10 years in a few months. He sat down without a word. No smile. Just a palpable tension between us. A silence that neither the clinking of cups nor the murmurs of other customers could break. I didn't say anything at first. I let him breathe. Slowly let go of the walls he had built around himself. Finally, after long minutes, he whispered, "I don't know where to start." I slowly looked down, then back up at him. "Start with the truth. No matter how much it hurts." He swallowed. And suddenly, his shoulders slumped. The mask cracked. He placed his hands on the table, clasping them like a child seeking refuge. "Mom, I'm sorry. I lost my job months ago. The company I worked for closed one of its departments overnight. I didn't have the strength to tell Emily, or anyone else. I was ashamed of letting you come live with us, when I couldn't even pay the rent anymore. I was angry at myself, but I turned it on you." And then he burst into tears. Real sobs. Raw, uncontrolled. Not the sobs of a grown man, but those of a wounded, lost child. I watched him cry, and despite everything he had done to me, everything I had felt, my maternal instinct took over. My love for him wasn't dead. He was battered, disfigured, but not dead. I stood up, walked around the table, and picked him up. He collapsed against me, like he used to do when he was scared of thunderstorms as a child. I whispered to him, "My son, we are a family. Nothing is more important than love and forgiveness. We will overcome this. Together." He nodded against my shoulder, unable to speak. That day, something was repaired. Not completely. Not miraculously. But a crack was mended. Clumsily, slowly, but sincerely. And sometimes that's all a mother needs to keep believing. Today, things aren't perfect, but they are human, sincere, and moving forward. Michael has finally found a stable job at a small industrial maintenance company. It's not the prestigious position he once held, nor the salary he'd hoped for. But it's honest work, and most importantly, it's a first step. A step toward rebuilding his confidence, his dignity, his ability to once again be a pillar of support for his family, and for himself. He also started therapy. At first, he didn't believe it. He said, "It's not for me. I'm not sick." But he eventually realized that the pain he'd been carrying in silence, the humiliation of failure, the fear of what others would think, all of this needed a space to come out, to be named. And today, after several months of regular sessions, I see the change. It's not spectacular, it's not dazzling, but it's real. He speaks to me more gently. He still apologizes sometimes, even when I tell him it's no longer necessary. He comes to see me some Sundays, unannounced, just to bring me a coffee or kiss me on the forehead. We're learning to rediscover each other, to reconnect, like two souls who have been through a fire but refuse to be extinguished. Emily, his wife, had distanced herself after the tensions of the past few months. She was tired of living in a home filled with anger, unspoken words, and stress. But since Michael has been in therapy, she's slowly coming back. She doesn't always sleep at his house, but she comes over for dinner, she stays to talk, she supports him on his journey. I sense she's cautious, but genuinely attached to him. Perhaps they, too, will find a path to healing. And me. I continue to work at the municipal library. This place, initially modest and almost anonymous, has become my sanctuary. Every morning, as I shelve the books, welcome curious children or solitary readers, I feel a profound peace. There, I am useful. There, I am respected. There, I am Helen, quite simply, not the mother, not the rejected elderly woman, not the victim, but a whole person. I've learned that even in the worst of the storm, even when all seems lost, a light can reappear. Not always where you expect it, but where you dare to look. This ordeal transformed me. It taught me resilience, that invisible but powerful ability to rise again, to rebuild even with broken pieces. It taught me that forgiveness is an act of courage, not a weakness. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. It means freeing your heart so you can continue to live, to love, to move forward. Today, I am no longer the broken woman of that autumn evening. I am a woman standing tall, stronger than before, more lucid, freer. And if I had to say something to those who suffer in silence, to those who, like me, have found themselves betrayed, rejected, lost, never lose hope, life can surprise. Wounds don't always disappear, but they can heal. And sometimes, deep within your pain, in that place where everything seems empty, an unexpected force emerges. A gentle but indestructible force. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the heart.